Welcome to the Eastgate podcast, where we have in-depth conversations about topics that we may not cover on Sunday morning. In this episode, we talk about the biblical church model. Happy Friday, everybody. My name is Nate. I am the student pastor here at Eastgate.
My name is Rob. I'm one of the pastors here at Eastgate.
Hi, I'm Robbie. I'm Janelle.
I don't need a title. Sorry.
Well, you're a bookkeeper, and you're married to
Yes,
Rob.
I'm all those things.
And you started Eastgate with Rob. You could say I'm the co-founder of Eastgate.
Sounds good.
What else would you like her to say?
I'm Janelle, and I'm also a pastor here at Eastgate.
And daughter to Rob and Robbie.
And I'm your daughter. Surprise.
Oh, this is sounding bad.
I'm Annie, and I'm the children's pastor here at Eastgate, Kidsgate pastor.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm the worship pastor here at Eastgate.
So I just got a text from Blake. Blake's running late to this podcast. He said I'd prefer to do the topic of convictions. So that's the one that we're going to be doing right now. We're going to be talking about convictions.
We can't. Let's not. That's not fair.
Yeah, okay, let's do the church model. This works actually too, because you were just saying like the sound bites, you don't like that as part of what you think is important in church. So what do you think?
Yeah, so what are we going to talk about in terms of the church model? Blake, Nate, you know I can't tell the difference between you two.
Yeah, so and I have like, this is like a deja vu moment. I'm pretty sure I've said this before. So if you go into a church in America, it's going to be pretty similar experience where you have, a part with music, worship, you have a part with teaching, and then like probably a part of prayer or something like that. So you have those three things built within this church model. Is that, do we get that from the Bible? How do we get that model?
This is just an exciting topic, though, for me, because that was the whole thing. Eastgate is here because I was perplexed about that very question. That was when we were part of the crazy church, which you've heard me explain before, but is an independent charismatic church that was abusive. And when we finally left there, my big quest was, what's church really supposed to be? I had a very bad experience, but I know Jesus instituted the church, so what's it supposed to be? And I went to the Bible thinking, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to find out exactly what the Bible says the church is supposed to look like, and we'll put it together that way, and it'll be scripturally sound, and everybody will be happy. And to my great disappointment, the Bible does not give us that kind of information at all. I mean, it gives us... Not only does it not give us detailed explanation about what leadership roles are supposed to look like, all it gives us is titles. Like we get, you have to intuit what even pastor means. Pastor is shepherd. I mean, it's a shepherd. Well, how does that function? What's he supposed to be doing, or she, or whatever? And can it be she? And all of these things. I mean, and that was deeply disappointing to me when I realized that information wasn't going to be easily put together.
All right, we'll end it there.
Okay, thank you.
That's why at Eastgate, we all come in and just face the wall. Don't talk to each other. Complete silence.
So what's a great point, because if we were to just say, okay, we're only going to base this on scripture, we don't really have a whole lot to go on, and so it's just either going to be a free-for-all, or we're going to stare at the wall, or what have you. And so to me... Well, go ahead.
Yeah. So how do you set up a church? How do you navigate that when there's?
Are you going to try to set up a church? Be careful what you say.
Yeah, I'm going to open up one right across the street from Eastgate.
Out of the gig room.
Westgate. That's right.
So that's when I realized
you'll cancel church services. I know that'll be the first thing you do as a church leader. We never meet, and there's no people. That'll be $1,000.
Wait, what? I don't understand why that costs $1,000. That seems high to me. Can we negotiate that?
No.
So my realization was there is no way to be able to piece together what church is or what it's supposed to be without looking at the history of this, how we got this. It's impossible to separate the function of the church or the development or the putting a church together without looking at the history of it, looking at the development of it. And so that's what my whole goal was, to just go and trace this. Because like I said, in the scriptures, we don't even. There is my question was like, who's really in charge? Like, who's the big top dog? Ultimately, you realize that was never the intention anyway. Jesus makes that all very clear. Nobody's supposed to be taking power over people, elevating themselves through titles or anything like that. So then when you've got a flattened out thing, you're like, well, then so everybody's in charge. But when you put everybody in charge, then nobody's in charge, and nothing can ever be accomplished. So there's leadership, but what does the leadership look like? And there's where you have to go into the titles and the things like that. Now, that's talking about governance, but then the structure of it. And I was like, where's that in the Bible? Like, we all face one direction in this room, and there's a platform, and in some churches there's an altar. Where was that in the scriptures? And why is it more holy up near the stage and less holy at the back of the room? Or how does all that work? And so that was my big exploration. So we tried all kinds of different things. Like when Eastgate first started, when I realized the early church met on the first day of the week, but there was nothing sacrosanct about that, in the sense that Paul never came along saying, make sure that you meet on the first day of the week. That's sacred and holy, and et cetera. In fact, he goes to great pains to explain that holy days don't exist anymore in that sense. Every day is holy in that. So we tried meeting on Saturdays. We mixed up the whole arrangement to where we didn't really necessarily have a front of the room. We met, we sat in the corner. The person who was leading worship or teaching was in the corner of the room, and we had couches and tables and chairs and all just a big jumble in there, and it was fun. We met on. Did I say we met on Saturdays?
But you talked about that too. I think even in your book of those attempts in it.
They were very difficult because we're going against the cultural expectation. And I spent most of my time in those days trying to explain that we weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, that because we were meeting on Saturday, or that we weren't like, a pseudo-Jewish sect or something.
We're not a cult. We left a cult, but we're not a cult.
We're not a cult. Look at us. Do we look culty to you?
We'll see you on Saturday night.
Well, and I think from a practical side, too, a lot of people had Sunday off. And they'd work all day Saturday. And to try to come to church at 7 o'clock at night. We didn't do it Saturday morning for some reason. We did it Saturday night. And so it was just smaller and smaller and less people. Like, it's hard. I have tomorrow off, but I'm tired Saturday night. So that another cultural kind of setup.
Reminds me a little bit of how Paul talks about women and everything, and how like there's like this cultural context, and he's like, this is how you can operate within it. So like there's an expectation that church is on Sunday here, so that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, and I think that there's nothing wrong with. See, I think that's the genius of Scripture, in that it didn't nail these things down, so that it's fully capable of fluctuating or changing depending on the specific needs of any given generation, time, or culture, things like that. And
that's what I was going to say, is that it's intentionally vague because different communities have different needs. And so shepherding those communities is going to look different.
Exactly. So so that's when the realization hit me that, pretty much we can do this as long as Christ is centric to the whole thing. We're getting into the word. With that much we knew. Paul was teaching. They were praying for each other. They were worshiping through singing hymns together. We pieced that together from the book of Acts and Paul in his writings, his letters. So I felt like as long as we've got those things, then pretty much however we want to set this up. And for myself, I began to look at it and say, okay, we've got 2,000 years of the church practicing it in this kind of form. Why try to buck that? Let's structure it in a way that meets a cultural expectation of what it would be about. But let's do our best to explain it as we go and make it clear. But on all of those things, we hold everything flexibly. In other words, if it gets in the way, like we're never going to hold to things that we do saying, well, this is the way we've always done it. If it ever gets in the way of being able to pursue a relationship with Christ, get into his words together, all those things, then it's, if it doesn't meet that goal of learning how to love God and learning how to love each other, then we'll be free to jettison it if it's not helpful.
Yeah, it's important. Like, it's always keeping tradition in its proper place.
Correct.
Yeah. What, Mom, were you going to say something?
Well, no, I was just thinking that, and it does make every church just slightly different, too, depending on how strict they want to adhere to either their denominational creed or their historical, their history, basically. If we've always done it this way, so it's going to be like that. So I think even though we moved to Sunday morning and we had worship and we had teaching, we flipped that a few times. Sometimes we do the teaching first and then the worship.
We made not a few enemies doing that too.
Yeah, that was funny. That I think, okay, so then you start to focus internally. So what's it look like internally, and what things do we keep and what don't we keep? And I think that has kind of been ever evolving.
Absolutely. That's one of those things that's just continuing on. And I think that when I got into the history of it, like really digging into it, like, how did this even start like this? Because, like I said, for 2,000 years, we've pretty much had a similar structure. It's got all kinds of nuances and variances and liturgies or not liturgies or things like that. Reformation comes in and jumbles things up, brings in congregational singing and things like that. But why this pattern? Why did it start like this? And to me, I realized it was built off of the synagogue model. Post-Babylonian exile, synagogue. After the temple was destroyed by Babylon in the Babylonian invasion and the exile of Israel, the synagogue system began, where basically small temples. In fact, even to this day, Jewish people will refer to their local synagogue as I'm going to temple. It was a substitute for the temple, a means by which they were going to gather together. And that was pretty much the structure that they followed. They would sing some communal hymns together, psalms together. It would hearkening back to the Psalms of Ascent that the Israelites would sing when they were heading in to the temple during the festivals. And then the rabbi would give encouragements from the Torah. They'd read the Torah together. And we see that modeled in Jesus' day. He goes into the synagogue in Nazareth, his hometown, and they hand him the scroll. So they're going through these meetings that are very similar to what we have in our structure today. So it developed off of that. Is this boring? Everybody's really quiet, and I'm not. I'm just yammering.
We're actively listening.
Okay.
Why are you guys looking at me while I'm talking? Sorry, I know we never do that.
Normally I've been interrupted multiple times by now. Now I'm nervous that I've just put everybody to sleep.
No, I was thinking about the temple being destroyed too, and not realizing how that impacted even how we are participating in church today. So I was actually thoughtful while you were speaking.
Yeah, and so when the early church begins, it's largely Jewish people, and even like in the book of Acts, we know they were still going up to temple. They met in one of the colonnades there at the temple, and then as the church is scattering around, they're meeting at synagogues. And then you can just figure that's going to, so when they realize they're not being accepted at their synagogue, they begin saying, okay, well, let's have our own synagogue. Let's have our own structure, our own church, our own meeting where we as believers gather together and practice our faith. And really, it just kind of develops from there. And it's kept that same kind of structure from that point on. It's not sacrosanct in the sense that there's biblical precedent to say, here's how it must be, and you have to do it this way or you're out of God's will. There's nothing like that. But we can actually see that there's something good about the continuity of it too. There's something comforting in that we're practicing something that people have been doing in one form or another for all these years, for millennia. And I don't know, I think that's cool.
And somewhere around this time, you came across that writing. It's either the Didache or Didache. No, you didn't. You didn't.
You just said no when she said that, and then you didn't say anything else.
When you said I came across a writing, I thought you were talking about the Justin Martyr thing.
So you just said no before she
I'm used to it.
Hold on a second. Time out. Before she finished her sentence, you stopped listening and said no.
You have to know how to do these things when you're a pastor.
So to review, when you spoke, we listened intently and thoughtfully. And you were like, what is going on? Why are you all looking at me? When my mom speaks one sentence.
I'm so glad you guys let me on these podcasts. I just feel so like firmly yes in my position.
You just immediately say no.
It's good you're laughing at yourself, honey. No, but while you were looking, you found this early church writing, the Didache or Didache, I'm not sure how you say it. And it was a writing, well, I'll let you give more detail about it.
No,
but
he will not.
No.
The answer is no. He's
But I
made
did
that
just
pretty
want to
clear.
say, because I know you'll never do this, the book you wrote a book called Eventually, The Wanderer for Wanderer, which is kind of the story of how Eastgate began. And I don't know how many people know that at the back of it, you did a rewording of the Didache, which has basic ideas of concepts of the church and how it functions. So
the Didache definitely has that. It's more of a rabbinical style writing, and it kind of informs us about what things are important. It does give practical things. If apostles come along and
What is that?
It's the oldest known manuscript that we have from the early church. It dates back potentially to 50 AD, which is phenomenal. Like, this is the earliest insight we have. Why it's not more prominent or known is beyond me. I can't fathom, because once I discovered that, it was a game changer. Just this glimpse into the heart and the minds of those of this developing movement. I thought it was amazing. And so they go through this is where you like. There's a section that I love. Like if an apostle comes in, or somebody comes along claiming to be an apostle, and has a word for you. If he stays 1 day or 2 days, it's okay. But if he stays 3 days, he's a false teacher. You can kick him out. If he ever says, God has told me that you're supposed to give me money, he's a false apostle. Kick him out. I mean, it's like we could use that information today, I think.
That information would have been helpful yesterday.
No.
No.
I think too, just you were touching on it with the the comfort of something that's familiar. I think that we as humans, we thrive in structure, and we can't meaningfully engage with one another and with Scripture if we don't feel safe and if we don't feel comfortable.
Very insightful, yeah.
And there's safety in walking in, even if you're walking into a new church.
Yes.
There's safety in, okay, this is familiar. I kind of know what to do. It becomes distracting when it's completely different, and you go, wait, where are we standing? What are we doing?
If we're all staring at the wall,
and then you can't engage, and you can't reflect deeply. You can't engage with that deeply. You can't. I don't know. I think of it in like, for me, there's like a deeper mind for me, and there's the like, if I'm thinking too much about where I'm standing or where I'm sitting, then I can't just relax.
You're like in survival mode, and you're thinking
that's really
about
good. And and there's and that shows then the wisdom behind having, at least a bare bones baseline kind of structure that's going to have different accoutrement or whatever associated with it, different ways in which it's approached. But yes, that underlying, that's really good. I like that. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too, that goes back to as well with like the idea, I feel like, of picking our battles. Like Scripture has enough challenging content in there for us to work through and navigate and figure out how we're going to live this out. And so what happens if we try to change these things that are not harmful?
Right.
It ends up taking our focus as the leaders to try to convince everybody on something that this is not life or death.
Spending all your time explaining that we're not a Jehovah's Witness church because we're not. Exactly. Yeah, that's
and so
right.
it's that main thing too, of like trying to keep, the main thing.
That's it. That's exactly it. So what I think what you were thinking of is when I went to
I think what you were trying to say.
What you were trying to say, which I will say much better now.
I wouldn't have expected anything less.
I'm sorry. This stinks. I shouldn't. Maybe I'll be quiet for the rest of this. I feel bad. Okay.
Wait, why? Why?
Can you do a fake laugh just real quick? There we go. So I was trying to parse through all this, trying to figure out, like, how do we approach this? What should we do? This is after I really felt like the Lord had nudged me. I was so lost. I was so confused. I didn't really want to go to church anymore. I just hated it. And that's terrible for me to say. But I mean, I didn't hate God's people or anything like that. But I just was so afraid of the structures. And that was my own, broken psyche at that moment.
But
It wasn't safe for you.
yeah.
It didn't feel safe. That's right. And so that's when I felt like the Lord dropped in my heart. Maybe you could do something different. Maybe you could approach this differently. And I got excited. I remember because I came home. I was all excited. Maybe we're going to do something different. Maybe we're going to start a meeting. Maybe we're going to do this. And right away, I'm thinking, well, what's it going to look like? What do we do? How do we put this together? Who's going to be in charge? What's going to happen? What are we supposed to prioritize? And there used to be I don't know if it's still magazines are a thing of the past. Magazines were these pamphlet kind of things that we used
You're
to
going back
get.
to sounding real old.
Yes, and the Bible History, that was the name of the magazine. Bible History, I think is what, Biblical History magazine. And they used to have it at the library down with the old library that was on the bay there. And I went down there and I was just kind of flipping through it, just thinking and praying and contemplating this. And I came across the writings of Justin Martyr. They had a whole little special on it, and they had a little snippet from his long apologies, his second apology. And an apology was that he was trying to write to a Roman governor to explain why they shouldn't be persecuting Christians. It's really a beautiful piece of work. It's another awesome thing that I will always recommend people look at. But he gave just a little snapshot of what the church looked like in 150 AD. And that was pretty amazing. So that's that's about the oldest snapshot we have. And what he described, and he says, we gather together on the first day of the week, which you guys call Sunday. We gather together and we sing hymns together, raise our hands together and pray to the one true God. And then he who's the president, the one presiding over this, will read from the scriptures and exhort us to see that our lives mimic what we read about there. Then we gather up an offering to go and distribute among the poor, those who are homebound. We take the Eucharist together, the bread and cup, and he said, and then the president will take it around to whoever may be sick or shut in and see to it that they have it. And he said, and that's it. Because there was all these suspicions about what these crazy Christians were up to. There was accusations that they were having weird orgies and stuff like that. And so he's trying to explain, this is it. But for me, I was sitting in that library, and it was embarrassing because I just broke down crying. I read that, and the simplicity of that and the genuineness of that just was so appealing to me. I just thought, if we could have this, if I could just find a group or be a group that reflected this kind of simplicity, that they're just there to do this and to look after each other, and that's it. And so that's what I used as the model at that point. Even though we did Saturday nights and tried to mix up the room and all that stuff, there's a lot of experimentation that went on. That was after we got a building, actually, because because it started in our home. Eastgate started in our how big was our 1,100 square foot house, and crammed all these people in there. We used to have bets about which piece of furniture would be broken by the end of the night. All these kids crammed back there into the little kids. At one point there's 40 people.
20 adults, 20 kids. And that was our max, pretty much.
So, we were just crammed into this little house, but that's the pattern. We sang some songs together. We got into the scriptures together. We determined how we could look around the neighborhood, look around our lives and do good, and went from there. So I don't know.
There's something really special, too, about that time when a church is beginning like that. I know going up to Eastgate, Mariana, where Julie and Trond are starting that community up there, it reminds me of Eastgate here when it first started. And there's that, when there's only 15, 20 people, you know them pretty well. And you just have that sense of community. And it's, we still have that here, but there's something unique about those first few years that it's kind of hard to
it is.
describe.
And it's beautiful from the standpoint of one wanting to see it grow or build or not grow. I've never been interested in growing a big church, but grow as a community together. There was moments of being traumatized because I just felt like I didn't know what I was doing. Like I kind of am still waiting to get to that place where I know what I'm doing, but I kept reading all these different things. I came across the Vineyard Church had what they called the 5-year plan, and it was vision casting, and they had to go through and plot out what what this should look like in 5 years and stuff. And I tried. I just can't. That's not me. I could not do that stuff. That just didn't work for me. I went through all kinds. I finally, again, felt like I felt as though the Lord was telling me, just push all that stuff aside. Just, trust me and just see it unfold. It'll unfold naturally. And it kind of did.
How do you feel about it now? Like 31 years later, are you happy? Like
it's I'm very happy. I feel like, there's so much history here, and there's people who have been here from the very beginning, which they say is a rarity to have people that were there at the institution of the thing or the launch of the thing to actually stick with it through all the various changes that it will inevitably go through. We've got people, Mike and Darby Brown. I mean, the Livingstons, people who've been here from the very outset. Don and Brenda Prather. I mean, just a bunch of people. Julie was so. I mean, I'm so stoked at what God has done, and that He's really, I feel like, drawing a community together. That's just been an ongoing thing. Like, it takes a lot. I mean, I'm not saying we've just now become a community. I believe we've had that model and we've been pursuing that. But I love what I'm seeing now. I love what I'm seeing now. That's right, isn't it?
you said it right. I think the first time.
Okay. Should I say it one more time just to make sure? I love what I'm seeing.
That's not good. It's no good.
I want to ask you this question, but I'm gonna maybe answer it for myself first, and then I want to ask you. But some of the most difficult aspects of starting a church from the beginning, and like I never grew up in church. My parents weren't really; they were just hippies, and just whatever. That was not their thing, and so I had no. I have no background to look back on and see what is this supposed to look like, apart from our experience in the crazy church, and we knew we didn't want it to look like that. And so I think for me, some of the biggest challenges is always like, well, are we doing it right? But also there's, for people that do have church backgrounds, when they walk in and they meet me, I'm like, who am I supposed to be? What's a pastor's wife supposed to be like? What she's supposed to lead the women in Bible study? She's supposed to do this. Can she work outside of the church? A lot of things like that. Like I didn't know what the expectations were.
Can you send your kids to public school?
Yeah, homeschool versus public school. A lot of those questions. I feel like I've come to a place of peace now, but that was probably one of the biggest struggles. Like, are we doing this like we're supposed to? What are we supposed to do? I don't know. And so it has ended up being kind of ever evolving, which I like, and I think that it should be, and it should reflect the community, basically that we're a part of. But that was probably my hardest thing at the beginning, and I wanted to ask what your biggest challenges were.
That's great insight.
Yeah, and that's good, and I think that ultimately I would mirror that, in that for myself there was always kind of like this straw man, which I think the straw man of the pastor who knows what he's doing and has got this all together, and that I was constantly comparing myself to. Over the years that has lessened. I've gotten to know enough pastors to realize none of us know what we're doing, regardless of what we project. And I think for me, the biggest thing is the having to navigate, and I'm not going to say disappointments, but the challenges of this not looking at all like I imagined it when it was first starting. And people will say, well, what did you think it was going to be? And it's hard to explain. A lot smaller. I mean, I'm grateful that we've been able to shrink down to the size we are now, but that was part of it. The fact that it does, like for me, if you were walking in here, like Annie was saying, and I love your insight on that, the idea that there's a comfortableness to meeting the expectations that are there. But for me, the idea that everybody could walk in and this just feels like
a normal church.
Yeah, just like any other church, which that's a good thing, I guess. In my mind and in my thinking, we were going to experience something different. I do think we've experienced something different. But you have to be here and get involved in it to actually recognize that, I think.
Yeah. From the outside, it seems normal.
I've experienced something different here than I have other churches, and I think that took 10 years of coming here. So.
And then you had to work here, and you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I think a big part of the goal is for people to feel comfortable here, and that's going to vary obviously with each person. Some are comfortable coming in dressed up. And that's something I think we all really had to discipline ourselves about, because we've always been very casual. Like, we went from the living room always wanting it to continue to feel like you're meeting in a living room, which is why we had couches for so long. And so when you're in your living room, you rarely dress up. And so for us, it was like, when we went around visiting churches after we left the crazy church, the hardest part with 4 kids and no money was looking good, walking through the door looking good. I just remember the kids' cowlicks sticking up and like wet spots on their shirts where I'm trying to get stains out. And so like, just take that out of the equation. But apart from that, I think that's a big goal of people feeling comfortable when they come in and us being friendly towards them without any kind of level of expectation. Again, because obviously we still have our traditions too, but
being respectful of
being respectful of them and what they're comfortable doing or being inside the church.
Yeah, because people have come in, like you were starting to say, maybe expecting to dress up for church, and it takes discipline to not make that a thing. Like, because we're casual to want to just say, oh, if somebody's dressed up today, dress should be a non-issue. That shouldn't, if you
Are you laughing, Nate, at the thought of Dad saying that to somebody?
Yeah, just imagine him standing at the front and greeting people. And someone comes in dressed in a nice, oh, we dressed up today.
But I get what you're saying. I think that, were you about to say something, Nate? Did I?
No.
Okay. Mom, I think we were talking about too, of like the expectations we have as individuals. There's something that we do have to figure out where we draw those lines of what we meet the standard for the culture and the expectation for the culture versus where we feel like God has called us to go. Because we can say, like, as a Sunday morning, like, we're good with like meeting the standards of the culture, the expectations of the culture, no issue there. But in terms of like you as a pastor's wife, there's an expectation of a pastor's wife to be this certain person, and you're having to decide at what point am I doing this to meet people with what their expectations are, but then do I stop being my like authentic self? But then, we're supposed to die to self. And so like, how do we navigate those things? And I feel like that too, I mean, everybody feels like probably a level of disappointment to people. I know, Dad, you've talked about that. Like, I'm sorry, I'm the pastor. And I feel like that, especially with my gender, of like, I'm sorry, I'm a female. I'm sure you'd prefer this to not, to be a male. And so
Not traditional.
Yeah,
maybe.
because there is the expectation, especially where we live, that it would be a male pastor. And so then we have to figure out, obviously we're not saying, okay, Janelle doesn't exist as a pastor because the expectation is for it to be a man. We feel like we prayed about it, like we're going to move forward with that. But I think we all have that to a degree of what the expectations are.
One of my favorite stories is Eastgate started, you kids were little, so you went through school, and Eastgate was a part of your lives always. And Jessica came home from high school one day. She goes, labels. I just hate all these labels. Hate the label of pastor's daughter. And I said, gosh, I hate the label of pastor's wife. And then Rob just said, well, I have to be pastor.
Yeah,
We're all in misery.
We're all in misery. It's a church, and everybody's miserable.
Can that be a poster?
That's our new T-shirt. Yeah. So I mean, that's the
nuanced things.
That's the nuances of grappling with that.
That's what I was thinking about throughout this conversation. It's like, you don't want to like bend to the culture, but like you definitely have to shift and move with the culture. Because if you're approaching it in a way, and then the culture changes, and that way doesn't reach people, you got to, figure out a different way.
This gets us back to TikTok. Is that what you were going to say?
Yes.
We need to
that's
have
why
clips.
we should start making TikTok.
No, okay, you know
We'll be
what?
the dancing pastor.
Point taken. But yeah, that'll shrink the church.
All you're picturing now
While
is
you're
yourself
thinking
dancing.
of
Yeah, that's all I can see. Isn't that awful? All I can, you hit on the culture. Because for so many, and one of the things I even wrote in my notebook is that we created a Christian subculture. We created an expectation and told the world to come in and meet our expectations, meet what it is that we want from you. And I kept thinking, this is backwards. When Jesus moves the gospel into the world, he meets people exactly where they are. So I felt like the church should be able to look at the culture, reflect elements of the culture back to itself, but then bring it to the ideal, like show what Christianity can be. So, looking at the culture and working with the culture, not to be influenced or molded by it, but to be able to be easily accessed by the culture made sense to me.
Really, yeah. You touched on something there. What did you say? The expectation is for you to
come into the church and meet our expectations and do what we want, what we need.
It. I hate that.
Any church that would be honest say what we need, because it's not going to work if people aren't coming in and feeding it. And then of course that line of thinking though spawned what was called the seeker-friendly services or churches. And boy, that was a big long experiment that didn't end well.
What does that mean?
What part?
Seeker-friendly services?
It started, I won't name names, but there was a church up in Illinois that began creating a model of what was called the seeker-friendly. And so they tried to make their production values as polished as could be, make sure that when people came in, they felt like they could, you're either going to a great concert or the best Starbucks in town or all these different things that make it feel like you're going to a shopping mall or a concert or something like that. But then we'll sneak Jesus into that.
Surprise, it's a church.
But yeah, exactly. The problem with that is that it never developed any sort of discipled believers. It didn't result in anything that was lasting. So there was constant turnover. That was like,
so it swung too far.
It swung too far in that direction.
It became modeled over about commercialism.
It really did. It became a marketing scheme. This is my opinion. It became more of a marketing. The focus was on the marketing. It doesn't feel
real.
Yes. And so then you have things that awful stories of people were talking about how they wanted to be praying for, people would come in and visit with them. And the guy who was supposed to be an associate pastor is wanting to go and pray for people and gets reprimanded saying, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be out in the lobby putting Velcro on the visitors. That's the word used to make sure that they stick here. And I'm sorry, that just is gross to me. That's just not, that's once we take on the mantle of marketing as though instead of the Holy Spirit adding to the church as he sees fit, as according to Acts, we all of a sudden have taken the responsibility on ourselves to put Velcro on people and make them stick with us.
And it's the same thing as holding to a tradition, as holding to a specific role, holding to something that's rigid, rather than letting the human experience flow through it.
Exactly, which goes right along with what I was going to say. I think you developed, I don't know who came up with the phrase of the meeting is for the people, not the people here for the meeting. So the people aren't here to serve a meeting. The meeting is for us. So if it's not meeting the needs of the people, it can change. There's nothing sacrosanct about the way we do things, and it doesn't have to be the same. And so we hope that still happens now, flexibility within the service and outside of the service too, basically, any church function.
I think too, I just don't want it to ever feel manipulative or forced, or it just needs to be real. Even if it's not pretty, as long as it's real and authentic. I went to this church in Jacksonville when I was in college, and I was only there for a few months. And I went in, and there's a lot of college-age kids, and they were super friendly, and we're, hanging out, quickly becoming friends. We're going out to church afterwards, and we're all going to get, hang out, go to restaurants. So, a month or two in, I get a call from somebody at the church, hey, we were wondering if you are ready to, volunteer as one of the greeters here at the church. And I was like, okay, I'm getting a phone call asking me about this. And I'm like, yeah, I like the church and I would like to participate. And they said, okay, great. What we do for greeters is we don't give them name tags, but their job is to go and become friends with the people that are there and intentionally so. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, oh, these people that I thought were my friends were greeters.
Oh.
And
that's so painful.
It was such a and you want me to be a part of that system that I come in now, and you train me how to make friends with people, but it's just part of this system. And I was just okay, yeah. And then I don't think I ever went back. I maybe went back one more time, just kind of watching and just feeling so nothing felt real to me. And I felt so suspicious. Even if people weren't greeters, I thought, are you trying to be my friend for real? Or is this part of what is trained? And that was their whole thing. They're we don't do it on purpose. We want to make sure it's hidden so people don't feel it was so... Yeah, I was just tough. Everybody just shifted in their seats. So it made me feel better of I don't think I can be a part of it. I just didn't feel good, but I didn't leave it thinking that's on them. I just felt oh, there's something wrong with me. I guess that I don't like
and
this.
And again, we don't want to be in a position of condemning another church or anything like that. But
I'm sorry if I came across that way.
You didn't. I'm just throwing a qualifier out there so that everybody understands. We're not trying to set ourselves up as the standard and everybody else is not meeting that. But I mean, that's the whole thing. The authenticity element of that is probably, and the problem with that then is it creates, we don't ever want to do that. Like I know exactly what I went to a church one time and I felt like I was being sold a timeshare. Like I was given all these pamphlets and information, and when we surely expect you to see you back, and oh, by the way, here's what our tithing schedule would be, and all of that, and I couldn't go back after that just because of that, just because I didn't feel like I was really connecting. I felt like I was being sold something. And so we never wanted to. I mean, we've gone to great pains not to do that here. The problem is sometimes then that gets read as being standoffish. Like, I'm going to give somebody space. If they're coming in here, I will say hello. I'll do my best to be friendly, but I am not going to sit on their lap and
ask if you like me.
Yeah, do you like me? You want to stay? You would stay here? No, I'd like to get away if I could. But that's it. I mean, so there's a hard balance in that, and I do believe that has to happen more organically, and that just takes time.
Yeah.
And I do think it's happening more.
It's not polished what we offer, and that's the problem. Is that shows sometimes.
I do think we offer regular apologies. Not that makes it right, or we have to be
That's
careful
just the
not to
Woodrum
enable
way.
ourselves. Okay, we're sorry.
Apologies are always free here at Eastgate.
That's right. I mean, we've had so many different ideas of T-shirts, like it's not too late to go to North Star kind of a thing, because we know we're not doing it, perfectly. And also, I've heard you mention before, sorry, a lot of us are introverts here, so if we didn't greet you, we're scared too. So many things like that. And again, we don't want to live there. But I think, again, we're trying to be honest and trying to be real and trying to recognize that, I'm sure there's something we missed. We're sorry. And we don't want to stay that way.
I think that's what's cool, though, about the microcosm of the staff, but also about the church as a whole at Eastgate, is that we don't bar extroverts from being extroverts, and that we acknowledge our shortcomings, and we look for people, and we allow other people to fill those gaps, because that's part of being a community, is recognizing that,
Exactly.
I'm not going to be a good greeter, but, Blake will be. And, we have other people who are happy to go and talk to strangers and are so good at easing new people into the community and connecting them with people and that kind of thing.
And I love that. I think I was talking to you, Annie, about a Church Leaders magazine article that there's, they're tracking trends or whatever. And who knows if they're right about this, but saying that the highly polished showmanship model for the church is beginning to wane, like it's losing traction. And they, as they've been investigating their determination as younger generations, what is the most young
Alpha?
Is it Alpha or whatever? Z?
Gen Z is probably the youngest adults.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
Gen Z.
Gen Alpha is still like high school.
And they were saying that
middle
Gen
school.
Z is far more interested in authenticity and looking for something that is, just going to be real for them. And that's when you were saying, well, so the next thing we have to do is manufacture some authenticity.
I said, I just imagined some church staff sitting around. All right, how do we manufacture this authenticity?
This makes me think of like the youth pastor pulling up a chair, turning around, sitting it backwards. Hey, kids,
Exactly.
Let's
I want to y'all.
let's get real.
Gosh, we sound,
Old and
we
jaded.
sound, I don't want to sound jaded or
Like
we're
we shouldn't
being
be
judgy
church
or
leaders?
Well, we shouldn't. I don't think so. I don't think any of us are.
I think it's okay though for us to be honest about the experiences that we had that did not work for us, and it's okay that we're proud of what we have. We recognize our shortcomings, but it would be weird if we're like listing the things we hated about Eastgate, like as if we didn't have a way to work on that.
Maybe we should.
That's what staff meetings are for.
Hand the microphone over to Tyler. He'll start.
But I think that we've put a lot of work and effort into keeping this authentic and sincere, and we've gone through those growing pains and the shortcomings and recognition of things that we could have done better, and learned a lot over 31 years. And so we do have a community that I am proud of, and I do want to let people know about that. Like there is no hidden agenda here. There is no like plan to manipulate anybody into staying here. There is no like thought. In fact, we could probably have more thought into some of those things, but maybe that's really clear. People are like, you don't have to explain it. It's very clear you've put no thought into this. But I'm proud of how we've maintained that integrity over the years.
Me too. And I think one thing we're always working on, we're work in progress. That's like our subtitle. And I think that's important to retain that mindset. But I do feel like a big part of wanting to be authentic and real is maintaining a level of openness and approachableness within the leadership too, because I do feel like, I mean, our experience, of course, was horrible with that. That was like the leader's way in, or not, like, if you don't agree with me, what are you doing here? Kind of an attitude. And so I think that's something that I'm not a leader, but I know y'all are, and I've heard lots of conversations of why don't we do this, and hey, can we try this? And it is always something we discuss and see if we can, if it's practical, if we feel like it meets the greater need or whatever. But I do think that's a big part of authenticity and being real and honest with everybody.
Cool. So if I could end it with this, I keep thinking about like lungs and air coming in and out of lungs. So like the Bible's the living, breathing Word of God, and I think a healthy church has to be breathing too. So I'm imagining the church as the lungs and the community as the air coming in and out. It's constantly growing and shrinking, expanding and shrinking.
I love it.
It has to do that. If you take in too much air, if you're trying to get all the air, at some point it stops. You can't do it. And the air that you're breathing in is constantly changing. It's always different. If you're breathing in the same air, you're going to pass out and die. So I think a healthy church needs to be breathing in that way.
I
Love
love
that.
it. That's great. Good job.
Yeah. Tyler, any final words? He says no. He's following Dad's example. No.
No.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
No.
If you, the listener, have any questions or if there's something you want to learn more about, you can send us an email at egcfpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.
I know what I want to say to get us started here because I got beef. Who edits these podcasts? Tyler? Nate?
Tyler will probably be editing one of these podcasts.
One of these days?
One of these ones that
One
we're
of
going to
these.
Oh, okay.
Saying.
So here's my problem. We record these podcasts, and I'm like, in the moment, I'm feeling really smart and funny, and then I go back and I'm scared to listen to it because I'm thinking, what if I'm not as smart, as funny as I thought I was? So I go back and listen, and yeah, I'm not. And the thing that I've got beef with is that I did not know how often I do fake laughs on these podcasts. Have you guys noticed? It's egregious. So whoever's editing, if you could just take those out, because here's the laugh I do that's not real. But in the time, I think I'm laughing for real, but I go back and I'm going, and you guys say things, I'm going, that's so good. And I need those edited out in the future.
So all this time, we thought you were laughing with us.
Well, this is the stinger. So
I was just like, what? I was just like, stop that, Janelle. Stop it. Don't do that. And I'm like, good one. So blah, blah. And I'm like, don't laugh.
So, but the lesson here is that the fault is with the editors.
Right.
That they should know
Right.
They
when
should
you're
know.
disingenuous.
They should be able to tell pretty clearly, and that's on them for not editing out. Obviously, I'm going to continue fake laughing today, but I've made it clear. Hopefully, you know how to work through that in the
So
future.
I've edited over 30 of these episodes, and I don't think I've ever heard that laugh. It's never stood out to me.
Yeah, I don't think I listened to them
Until now.
I've never heard it.
So now,
yeah, in this moment.
do you-
So from this point on, all we're gonna do is
I
Do you mind doing a few more of those? Because after
We need a
everything you
baseline.
say, I'm going to put that at the end.